All right, now let us finish up the chapter by looking at these practice questions at the end of the chapter. The first question reads, explain the relevance of office of the registrar of company. So why is it relevant? So we haven't seen anything to do with relevance, right? But we can draw the relevance of the office of the registrar from their functions because they are only relevant to the extent of what they do, right? So for this particular question, the most relevant function of the office of registrar is basically the administration of the act, right? Administration of the act. So I'll just say that the office of the registrar is relevant because it is there to administer the act, including uh, including the regulations made under it, right? The regulations made under it, and the supervision of incorporation and registration. So what we are saying is, I would say that the relevance, right, of this office similar to the functions, right? Right, and the most important function of them all is the one that where he's actually administering the act. Without the act, right, there's no the office of registrar, right? Without the act, there's no his functions. So I would say that it is relevant because it actually is there to administer the act, making sure that the act is being followed, act is being uh, is actually enforced, right? They are supervising the incorporation of companies, registration, and so on and so forth. So I would say that the relevance is just basically there to make sure that the act is being administered, right? The act is being administered. So basically that's it, right? In terms of the second one, give any functions, right? So with the functions, I could say any of the functions, right? Any of the five functions, right? So, uh, so we look at five functions, right? I'll just say the first one is to administer original act, to administer the act, right? To maintain a registry of company in database, right? Database to perform any other task as specified by the act or any other role specified by the act or any other law, right? So we have administering the act, to maintain a registry of company in the database, perform any other task as may be specified by the Act or any other law, right? We have 3 there, right? To provide 2 modes of filing, right? So to provide 2 modes of filing, right? We have the electronic and the traditional hard copy way. And lastly, we can talk about to provide a tool of inspections of documents in the register, right? So to provide a tool of inspection of documents in the registry, right? In the registry. So you are providing that freedom to people that want to supervise the documents, right? After paying the fee, a particular fee, you can give them access to documents in the registry. So these are amongst the other functions of the registrar's office: administering of the tax act, maintaining of the registry of companies in the database, performing any other tasks that may be specified by the act, providing modes of filing. We have the electronic one, we have the traditional one, and also providing a tool of inspection of documents in the registry after payment of a fee. So those are the functions of the office of the registrar of company, right? Or the registrar of company, right? Let's look at the difference between public company and private company. Private company and public company. So the first difference would be that private company has a minimum of 1 person, while a public company has a minimum of 3 members or 3 people. So that's the minimum number of members that can be for public company, while private is a minimum of 1. In terms of maximum, right? Private company, right, has maximum of 50 members, while public company has no limit. So there's no limit for a public company in terms of members. All right. Then here, as the third one, we could talk about a public company can issue its securities to the public, while 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 the private company is not allowed to. All right. So we've mentioned 3, but we can also look at something to do with the disclosure requirements. So we have public company has stringent or strict rules on disclosure, right? On disclosure and the requirement of the accounts or the financial statements. We're not talking about the accounts, we're talking about the financial statements to be audited. So they are required to be audited, right? While these rules are less strict with private, right, companies. So what we're saying is, with the public companies, they have a lot of strict rules when it comes to disclosure of information. They have strict rules on financial statements being audited. While with private companies, these rules are less strict, right? They are not required by law to have their financial statement audited, right? Right? They are not required by law. And some of the disclosures that apply to public companies are not required by private companies. So we can see that these are some of the differences between them. Somebody could think of maybe they talked about that private company allow their assets rather it's their securities to be transferred, right? So the question is it not allowed with private company? Yes, it is allowed by the private company for them to transfer their securities. But maybe there might be some restrictions. So if you wanted to include that one, you could say that uh, private companies might have, not they have restrictions, might have restrictions on the transferability of its shares. So they might have it in their memorandum that the shares should not be transferred to somebody else, right? Maybe just to make sure that they have the control, right? Then I'm saying it's might have, but not always. It's not like they restrict them from transferring. Because if I have shares in a private company, if I no longer want them, right, I could sell them to my brother, to my sister, right? But they might have some rules, right? Or I might sell them to somebody inside the company, right? But they might have some regulations that restrict this, maybe for whatever reasons. Maybe they don't want to lose control, or maybe they don't want to involve other people. So they might have these rules. So if you wanted to write that one, you basically want to write that there might be restriction on the transferability of securities in a private company, while with a public company, it is allowed for this transferability, right? So you want to make sure that you are clear on that. But we are not saying that private companies, people cannot transfer their shares. That's why I don't want to put it here. That's why I am reluctant to put it here. But if you were out of points, you could write that one. Mention the two types of companies limited by share. We know that in terms of limited liability, we have two types, right? We have two types. We have limited by shares, all right, by shares, and we have those by guarantee. So they're saying what are the types under limited by shares? So we have the private company and the public company. So those are the two under limited by shares, right? Those are the ones that are limited by shares. State and define. So they want us to state, then also define. Not just state, but state and define. So we have state and define the types of companies under the company's law. So we have basically, right, a number of them. So we'll start like that. So we have private company. So we have public company. We have company limited by guarantee, company limited by guarantee, and we have state owned company. So those are the three. So we have to state them and define them. So a private company is one, right? One that what? A company is one that first has minimum of one member and maximum of 50. That's the first one. And the second one is basically memorandum. Its memorandum does not allow it to offer its securities to the public. So those are the two items in the definition of a private company. Is one that has a minimum of one member and a maximum of 50, and its memorandum of association does not allow it to offer its securities to the public. When it comes to private company, is one that first has a minimum of three members. There's no maximum, right? No maximum. One, its memorandum does allow it to offer its securities to the public, and also its memorandum does allow the transferability of its securities. Right? So we have a minimum of 3 members. There's no maximum. Its memorandum allows it to offer its securities to the public, and its memorandum also allows it to transfer its securities, the transferability of its securities. Now let's look at this one. So we have one that the liability of its members is limited to the amount that each member undertook, right, to pay in the event the company wound up. So we're saying that the liability of its members is only limited to the amount that each member, right, said or guaranteed in the event that the company is ending and it has liabilities, right? So in that event, right, is only limited to the amount that a person would say has pledged, right? Has pledged to pay, right? Has pledged to pay. So when I kuti company zakamacha zake kuti ndingongole, I can afford to pay 500,000. Doing out 1 million, right? They're not forcing you to say, but you are actually saying what you can. So you're only limited to that amount that you said you undertook when the company was starting or at any point in time. Right? Another thing is that the primary purpose should be for charity, or it's a non-profit making, right? And profit making for charity or non-profit making. So another thing that you can add, right, which is highlighted in another section, is basically not allowed to distribute its profits. So it's not allowed to distribute even if a company or if this company was making profits, right? It's not allowed to distribute its profits to its members, right? They are not allowed to do, even if they made a lot of money, they are not allowed to do so. And lastly, we should look at the last one, the state-owned, right? Is a company that is controlled by the government, state-owned. So is a company that is controlled in the meaning of the act by the government. So it is also known as parastatals or statutory corporations like Eskom, Water Board, right? These are controlled by the government, by the meaning of the act. What does the act say when it comes to control, right? But generally, it just means that it is controlled by the government. That's a parastatal or a state-owned company, right? A state-owned company. So those are the types of company under the Companies Act. So they're saying distinguish a company limited by guarantee by those that are limited by shares. We saw there are two types of limited liability companies, those limited by shares and limited by guarantees. So what are the differences? So the differences in this case, so those by shares, limited by shares, we're saying that members liability is limited to the amount of any unpaid shares. So what I'm saying is, if I own shares in the company, I'm only limited to the amount of money that is unpaid to those shares. But otherwise, they can never come to my place to personally seize my assets. But they can only do that if I have not completely paid for my shares. But if I have completely paid my shares, the liability stops there. Right? Stops there. Right? So we're saying that it is only limited to the amount of any unpaid shares. Right? So if you haven't completely paid, then you're basically going to have to contribute towards that, right? Where the company is in difficulties, you're supposed to pay that. The question is, how is this possible, right? If you have done accounting too before, you notice that the company does not just request people to pay the amount in full at once. Maybe because they might not need the money at once. So they might sell their shares at 20 kwacha, but they might say that on application, pay 5 kwacha. Maybe first call, pay 10 kwacha. The last call, maybe 5 kwacha. So you can see that maybe by the time that you are doing it, they have only what collected maybe collected 15 quid. It means that you are limited to this amount. If the company is in difficulties, you still have to pay that amount, and that's all, right? So it is limited to any amount of unpaid shares. While limited by guarantee, right? We're saying that members' liabilities is limited to the amount each member undertook, right? Each member undertook to pay in the event the company was to wind up. So you are only limited to the amount that you guaranteed, right? If you say that the company, I'll pay 100,000 if the company is to end and the company has liabilities. So you're supposed to pay that. If the company is to end, but it does not have any liabilities to anyone, right? Or it has liability, but all its assets after selling them means that all the liability has been settled, then the member is not supposed to pay anything. They're only paying it when the company is still owing money to some people, right? So then they will have to pay, right, to the extent each member undertook in the constitution of the company to pay in the event the company was to wind up. So that's the difference. The other one is limited to the any unpaid shares, or the other one we're saying that it's limited to the amount that each member undertook to pay in the event the company was to wind up. So basically, those are the differences between limited by shares and limited by country. Maybe another one that is also obvious could be that the purpose, right? So we could say that limited by shares, they are basically profit oriented, right? In other words, purpose to make profits. So purpose is to make profits, right? While we know that limited by guarantees are charities or they are not profit making organizations. So that's another difference. Other one is they are profit making, the others they are not profit making organizations. That could also be a difference as well. Now let's look at distinguish a holding company from a subsidiary, right? What is a holding company from a subsidiary? So we know that a holding company is just the same as the parent company. So we just say parent controls the subsidiary. That's the first distinction, right? Another one is that the parent owns at least 50% of shares in the subsidiary. And lastly, parent, right, has over 50% of the voting rights, voting rights in a meeting, right? In a meeting of the subsidiaries company, right? If the parent has over 50% of the voting rights in the meeting of the subsidiary that it is a holding company, right? So basically, that's it. All right. First, parent controls the board, right? You could say that controls the subsidiary or controls the board composition of the subsidiary, right? Second thing is that the owner is 50% of the subsidiary shares. The third is that the parent owns or has over 50% of the voting rights in a meeting, right, in the subsidiary company. So both those are the sort of the distinction. The distinction is sort of in that manner, right? You could also switch it, right? You could say that a subsidiary is a company that is controlled by the company. So you can do it in both ways, right? So that's basically the distinction between a holding company from a subsidiary. They're saying comment on the following, right? So what is the one person company? We know that first thing is that this one is a private company. So it is a private company where it's where it has one its sole member is also the director. So it's a private company where its only shareholder or member is also the only director. So you have to make sure that you are the only member shareholder and you are also the only director of the company. That is a one person company. Right? If you are the only shareholder but multiple directors, that's not a one person company. Right? So if you have number of shareholders but one director, that is not a one person company. But the only member is also the only director of the company. We already looked at a state-owned company, right? Is a company that is controlled by the meaning of the acts by the government, right? It is also known as a parastatal or a parastatal or a statutory corporation. That's a state-owned. While a dormant company, right? A dormant company, we say that it is a status in which a company has no significant transaction during any period. So, right, that is a status, right? Is a status where a company has no significant transaction during any period. So if in any period a company did not do any significant transaction, it is a state dormant company, or it is registered as a dormant company. So we know that a dormant company is not required to audit its financial statement. One is not required to pay any specific fees, right? Because it is stated to be a dormant company. While a foreign company is just a company registered outside but carry on business in Malawi. So is a company registered outside Malawi, right? But carrying on business in Malawi. So you can register a company, maybe Tanzania, but carrying on business in Malawi, that is a foreign company. So that's basically it. And lastly, they're saying that write an essay detailing the advantages and disadvantages of operating a business in form of a partnership as compared to a registered company. So I'll just highlight the advantages and disadvantages. I will not actually put it in an essay format. So this one is, I'm not just saying that what are the advantages of partnership, but they're saying advantages of partnership over a company. That's the difference, right? It's not the same thing as saying advantages of partnership, but what the advantages of partnership over what? Over a registered company, or compared to a registered company. The first thing is that partnership can start by or can form by writing, word of mouth, or conduct, right? While there are a lot of procedures and information required to form a company. What this point is trying to say is that it is easier to start a partnership as opposed to starting a company. So that's one of the advantages. It is easier to start a partnership, just basically by word of mouth, in writing, even by conduct. Partnership can start, but there's a lot of formalities associated with registering a company's information to be satisfied, and so on and so forth. That's the first advantage of partnership over a registered company. The second advantage could be things to do with disclosure. So partnership is not required to disclose anything, right, for public scrutiny, or right for the public to or to be available to the public, anything, right, which can make its dealings private. That's the advantage, because you're not required to disclose anything, right? It means that its dealings are private, right? Are private. That means competitors cannot know what the company is doing, right? While companies are required to disclose certain information, like the financial statements and so on and so forth, right? So that's another thing, right? We're saying that the partnership is not required to disclose anything which make its dealing private, right? Whatever they're doing, it is private, right? It is private. That means what they are doing. Their competitors cannot study them and do something to overtake them, because their things are private. If they want to make their things private, they can do it in a private fashion. While the registered company is required to disclose or make available certain sort of information like financial statements and so on and so forth, which can be available to the public. Anyone can go there after paying a fee can view this information. So that's an advantage of partnership over what? Over the company. Another thing we could talk about maybe management, right? So the partners can be part of the running of the business, right? Hence, no conflict of interest, right? While company appoint directors which may cause conflict of interest. What we're trying to say here is that if I am the owner and I'm running, right? I'm the same person running, there will not be any conflict of interest. But for most companies, the shareholders, those running, the owners of company, and those running the business are two different things, right? That means the directors might be chasing their own interest, right? They might be chasing their own interest. Like, for example, Kumazi versus Masara Ambidi, Kumadenga company, right? Chasing their own personal interest instead of chasing the interest of the owners of the company. So because of this, it would also be another disadvantage, right? Disadvantage. So you could see that there are a number of things that you can talk about. You can also talk about that, you can talk about that there might be personal there might be personal relationship between the customers, right? Right? There might be personal relationship between the customers and the owners, right? So that's for a partnership, right? So if the owners have a personal relationship, they know how to deal with it, right? Because they know how to easily change, right? Even if there are rules or regulations, they might change. What I'm trying to say is, if I go into a shop, right? For example, Muni Mwenye, Munuage, right? He can easily give me a discount, right? Certain extent, right? Which he feels comfortable because there's this relationship between the owner and the customer. Well, if there is an employee there, right? It's hard for them to go beyond what their boss told them, right? So because partnerships are basically maybe small, right? There might be this personal relationship between customers and owners, right? Personal relationship, and that makes business to go on well. While with the companies, there's this gap between the owners and the customers. So it might not be a good thing, right? Because one thing that can also boost a company's revenue is that the relationship that the customers have with the business. So if they have a good relationship, it's easier for them to do more business with them. So that's something that I would just add on. But you could see that those are the major three. Partnership, first, easy to form as compared to a company. Second thing, less disclosures required, right? Less disclosures required. So making it private, right? A lot of disclosures required so making it less private. Another thing is that partnership can be part of the running of the business. Hence, there's no conflict of interest, right? Where companies employ directors who might be chasing their own interest, right? So there might be this conflict of interest. So those are the advantages that you can talk about right over the what? The company. While at disadvantages first is that partners have unlimited liability. Partners have unlimited liabilities. Unlimited liabilities. Right? Second thing is that partners partnership has less access to finance as compared to what? Finance as compared to companies. Right? Another thing is that partnerships have no perpetual succession or no continuity, right? Which is not a good thing. While companies has continuity, right? If a person dies, it means the partnership has to end. If they want to continue, they have to reform another one. So you can see that some of the advantages in terms of partnership, right, are things like those, right? Things like those. So you can see that you could think about other things, but think of them in comparison with the other, right? You're saying that partnership have unlimited liabilities, while members of companies have limited liability, right? First thing. The second thing is that partnership has less access to finance as compared to a company, right? Because company can issue shares, can easily get a loan, and so on and so forth. Another thing is that partnership have no uh right. We're looking at partnership have no. The first one we're talking about unlimited liability, right? Less capital, and here we're talking about have no continuity, right? Have no continuity or perpetual succession, right? While companies have this perpetual, there's continuity. Even if a member dies, a member moves, right? There's this there's this what? Continuity, right? Continuity. Another thing is that you could talk about that uh, partnership. Partnership is hard to transfer ownership. Transfer ownership without disruption of operation. Without disruption of operations. Right? While a company, it is easier for one to transfer his shares to another without disrupting any of its operation. So if you were to write your essay, you would start to think in those lines. So that's the end of the chapter. That means next time we'll be looking at chapter 2. Thank you.